A lot of people struggle with perspective, 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective, until 6 points perspective, the most complicated ones. Let's start with something that is kind of easy so that we can see what we can do. For example, let's start with a very basic shape. We have basically an eye level. We have two vanishing points here, okay? So this is a left vanishing point, and this is the right vanishing point, okay? And then we can imagine that we make a cube, okay? So all the lines, of course, here goes to the vanishing point. Same thing, this one. Then we take this, we go here. So we have our first face of our cube. And to have all the others, it's enough to go from this point to the left vanishing point, okay? Also the same thing from here. And then, of course, if we do that, we have another point here. We go up, parallel, 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 okay? Parallel to the main line, center vertical line. And we go to the right vanishing points, okay? And this one too. And of course, the other line. In transparency, that's how it is. So if we make those outside outlines a little bit darker, here we have our cube in perspective. Well, this is kind of easy. Okay, now that we have our cube in perspective, if you want, we can add a little bit of shading, a little bit of light. We have always a light source, okay, coming from the top, okay. Here it's our light source, all right. And then, of course, the light source will generate some shading, some shadows, cast shadows. You have to know that when we have a light source on an object, we always have three tone values on each surface. Right, 3 tone values on our object. And this is provoked by the light, the angle of the object, the light source. So, for example, in this case, we have number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 1 is going to be the lightest, okay? Very clear, very light, because the light is coming from the top, so it's hitting this surface very, very, very easy. And therefore, what do we do in this case? We just add a little bit of shading, just a little bit, okay? And we just go to white. You see, I'm really, really light. Look, that's it. And every time we add some shading, remember that the darkest part is the one that is closest to the light source and not the contrary, okay? The surface number 2, in reality, is the real color. So if this is a medium gray or light gray cube, okay, let's make a little bit of all surface gray. Okay, let's say that this is our color, all right? And because we are having the effect of the light and a little bit of shadow, in this area, it will be just slightly darker, just a little bit. So let's make it a little bit darker. Okay. You see? As you can see, I kept this value here, the shading, exactly the way it was before. I just made this part darker, making a shading transition from dark to light, very gentle, very kind, without having too much of a difference, okay? We don't want to have a feeling of a black stripe or a dark stripe because that's not realistic. Okay, so, and this is our surface number 2, okay? Now you can already see that there's a difference between number 1 and number 2. This is slightly darker, this is lighter, in this area it's white, because there is the light, the sun, it's really hitting. Now, this one is in real shadow, because it's facing on the other opposite side. Therefore, this one will be darker. So let's start making this one darker. Okay, now I made this first layer of gray with my pencil, and then I check. You know, this one is lighter than this one. That's good. But I think that this part can be pushed a little bit darker to be more realistic. So the shadow starts from here, the area that is in shadow. So I'm going to hit this a little bit more. You see? Okay. And as you can see, once again, every time I start, I create always a contrast, light and dark, light and dark. You see? Okay, so now let's say that we have our cube in with the 3 surface tone value, okay? So now we understand the shape, we understand the 3-dimensional effect of this cube. And now we have to add, you know, the cast shadow. So I go from this point to this one here, all the way. The same thing I do this with this one, okay? And the same thing with this one that is down here. You remember? It's in the other, on the other side. There you go. So we have those 3 lines, which is a projection, basically, of this element, this vertical line, and the other one in the back of our cube, the one that we don't see. Then we take the center of our light source and we hit this point, and this point until we go across those 3 lines. Let's do it. Let's do first with this one. I go freehand, I should take my ruler. So this is the first point. Second one is this one. So it's here. And this one is gonna be basically here, okay? So from here to this, going there. So look what happens now. If we're gonna put together those points, we have the shadow, the cast shadow of our cube. You see? And this one will be darker than this value number 3. In fact, this is a sort of a number 4, if you want. So let's do it. So I go a little bit darker, as you can see. Okay, so now that we see that we check this, we can already have a real feeling of what's going on. But we still need to push this a little bit darker because this value, it's almost like this one. And we always need contrast because the right contrast shows depth, okay? I write it here. Contrast helps depth. All right? The three-dimensional effect. Okay, so let's do it. Let's go a little bit darker. I'm doing sketchy, okay? Not too precise, but it's okay. Don't worry. It's fine. This is just a sketch. All right, so this one I think we have to fix a little bit because it's not straight. Okay, so you see, now we have a feeling of this cube in its three-dimensional aspect with its shadow in the right perspective, 2-point perspective, okay? 2-point because those lines are parallel, you see? We could make this in 3-point perspective with the third point down here very, very far if those lines were converging, you know, converging down. But in this is not the case. Okay, so 2-point perspective. All right? Now there is another thing we can do. It's the shadow. In the shadow, we have a little bit the reflection of the object inside the shadow. This is the reality, you know. So what do I do here? Look. I make that sort of a reflection by making much darker, okay, much darker, this area which is the reflection of this element here on the ground in its cast shadow. All right? So now that we have that, we can just clean up a little bit our lines, okay? And as you can see, I make it like almost like a shading edge. Why? Because the shadow, it's never really ultra crisp, you know? So that's what I'm doing now. Sort of shading, you know, shading the edge. And another thing also, here, you see? I'm making a sort of reflection on this base. And here we have our cube in perspective, 2-point perspective, with its shadow, its cast shadow, its reflection in the shadow of the same object, okay, reflecting on this base, on this, how can I say, this plane on which it's sitting, okay? Okay, so this is a very quick, simple exercise to explain 2-point, okay, 2-point perspective, all right? One is here, and the second one is here. Left vanishing point, right vanishing point. All right, so now if we take this idea, okay, this type of perspective, and we apply to do something. I don't know, whatever you want. We can imagine to make a house. We can imagine to draw a box in perspective. Anything. I don't know. For example, if I want to draw in perspective, okay, I kind of replicate the same schema of what I did before, so that it's easier for you to understand. You know, we can imagine, for example, let me do something like, let's see what happens. Okay, so first I start with this, with this shape. Okay, so then what can I do? I put a sort of a center line, okay? And then I put an inclinated top. Okay. I put the center line because the center line helps me to understand the proportions between the right and the left part. It's always, that's always the way I do. I draw cars, therefore that's our technique in drawing cars, to make sure that our cars are in good perspective without big mistakes. Okay, so then I can, let me say, I can go still straight, vertical, okay. So as you can see, I'll always use the vanishing points to make sure that that I always have something that is following the right perspective. And then let's say that I want to put an edge here on this object, okay? So I go here, I take my thickness, which probably it's gonna be small, not too big, and then you see, this is the part in perspective, following the right perspective. And of course, I do the same thing here to make sure that I have the thickness at its base here. Okay, so now we have this, and I'm sure you're thinking, yeah, but what the hell is it? Let's move on. So now we have, let's say that we want to have a radius here, because we don't like these sharp corners, okay? Okay, so this is the point where our radius starts, okay? And this is the radius. So yeah, I go from here to the vanishing point, and here too. And now I know how to make the radius on the other side, and here. And of course, I will do also in the back for the thickness. You see? Okay, let's say that in the back I want to do something that is like this. So now we have this part. If we want to see the face of this element in perspective, I go from here to the vanishing point on the right, and there you go. You see? Okay, so now let's take again this one. Let's make it a little bit better with its outline. So now I'm kind of cleaning up the outlines so that we have something clean. Now you noticed probably that all the outlines of the object where I can grab my object, okay, has an outline that is kind of thick, you see? This one. And the other lines, the internal lines, like this one, this one, this one, they're a little bit thinner. And this is a rule that we use in technical drawing, sketching, even in cartoon drawing, you know, all in the art, drawing artistically, because that gives a feeling of depth, okay? So if you put all those lines all the same thickness, it will look more bidimensional. So this is a way to make it look more three-dimensional, okay? All right, so now we have this. Now we can imagine this is, for example, it's, I don't know, we can say that this is a display, like a computer. Why not? So if this is a display, okay, let me put first a little bit of shading, a little bit of shadow, okay. Okay, I'm trying to guess the shadow of the whole object. Then we said that this is the face that is darker, okay? See, now I'm playing with contrast. You see? Now we have a feeling of the three-dimensional thing here. But this is really dark. But that's inside. This is empty. But still, it's dark. There is no light there. Okay? And then another thing that is gonna be dark, it's gonna be this edge that is like this one. Same thing. All right? So, this is the surface number one, because there is the light that is really hitting. So we give a little bit of shading from the corner, on the right corner, all right, like that. This one, same thing. So let's say this is a computer on its stand, okay? Yeah, why not? Let's say that. Okay, I make my point sharp. Okay, so now we have to put the reflection on this because this is all glass. It looks like glass, right? So okay, and this is gonna be, of course, a dark glass. All right, so what do we do? First of all, let's put okay, so I just put the first value, okay? The first value. Now I will put the glass area because let's say that this computer has a little frame. Okay? So let me put the frame. Always trying to follow, of course, the perspective, all right? The radius. Okay, so, all right, and here we can put, I don't know, a logo or something. Let's say that that's a logo, the logo of the computer. Okay, the computer brain. I put the camera a little bit closer. So now let's make this shading here. So first of all, here it's gonna be really dark. So you're putting reflections on the glass. All right, so now on the other side, we have a shading that is the core, which means the concentration of the sky, which is gonna be kind of dark shading into the light area. Let's do it. And here too. And as you can see, in the area where we have the radius, I really don't touch that much because the radius, it's negative, it's picking up the light. You see? Okay, now we have to make this a little bit darker to make sure that it looks good. Yeah, now it's better. same thing here. Okay, you see? Now we have this sort of a computer on top of this little stand, okay? But the stand, to be honest, we need to improve it. So we're gonna do it. Of course, when we make sketches with more objects, the complexity of the shading will be more normal. So here, for example, I will apply what I said before, you know, this sort of reflection on the shadow of the object, you know. Not too much, just a little. You see? Okay, and now what do? We are going to open here. Gonna make a modification. We'll modify here. We will just open. And we will just create, you know, like a little bridge, you know, like those stands that we have, that we can buy on Amazon or wherever, you know, so that we can put another computer underneath. So what I'll do, I will now, first of all, we have a little bit of shading, shadow to put here and here, because it's the shadow of this small piece of furniture, you know. You see, like that. You see? And now we can imagine that here, always following the perspective, we have underneath how do we call it? A keyboard, you know, kind of modern keyboard. Always following the perspective, always. You know? So let's draw the keyboard. Now, because of perspective, all those lines will be a little bit bigger here, a little bit wider, and then moving toward the part that is far from us, they will come closer because of the perspective. All right? We put little details here in this area, just a little bit more. Okay, so we have this, and we have also a little bit of shadow here. That will fade out, of course. You see? So now, this is an example how we can start, from a very simple cube, explaining how it works, the rules, the two-point perspective, the parallel lines, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 value tones for the surfaces, the contrast, the depth, the shading, okay? And then using the same thing, we can go and sketch whatever we want, So here, I need to make those lines a little bit darker. And here too. To make sure that we have a feeling, three-dimensional feeling. You see? And now what else we can do? Allez, forza. Let's do something else. So if this is my line here, from perspective, okay? And here too, I can imagine. Let's see what I do. So we can we have this little box, okay? But now we're gonna make it we're gonna make it something. You see, we can make a mouse. According to the light, a little bit of shadow. You see? Always following the perspective. Always following the perspective. So we have our mouse. All right. And then what else can we have? Well, let's say that the mouse, it's on top of its little math. Always following the perspective. You see? The math has the corners that are a little bit around. Same thing here. Okay. Now let's say that we have some graphics on this mat, okay? Something funky. Okay, so let's make this part darker. All right, and this part here too, a little bit. You see? Okay, I take my ruler just to check few lines, okay? You see? I'm going from the vanishing point on the left. It's pretty much okay. No, not that bad. Maybe it's too much like that, okay? Then from this one, yeah, this one is, it's probably not really top. So we can always fix. You see, now I fixed this. I saw that there was something that was a little bit wrong. Yeah, like that. All right. Okay, so I hope you like this video. I hope most of all that this video is useful to you. Okay? Thank you very much. Bye bye.